The elevator doors closed. Then everything stopped. Mason Reed stood frozen as the lights flickered, trapped between floors with the one person who could destroy his career with a single word. Victoria Hale, Manhattan's most feared CEO, pressed herself against the wall, her perfectly composed mask cracking as the small space seemed to shrink around them. What happened in that elevator would change everything. This is the story of an invisible man who became impossible to ignore, and the powerful woman who saw him when nobody else did. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around until the end. The coffee was burning through the cardboard sleeve. Mason Reed shifted the cup to his other hand, balancing it against the stack of emergency reports tucked under his arm as he rushed across the marble lobby of Hale Industries. 6:47 a.m. The building was still mostly empty, just security guards and cleaning crews and people like him, the ones who showed up early because they had no choice. His phone buzzed. He didn't need to check it. Another message from his daughter's school about the field trip permission slip he'd forgotten to sign. Again. The elevator dinged. Mason stepped inside and hit button 14, watching his reflection in the polished doors. Rumpled shirt, tie slightly crooked. The permanent exhaustion of a man who'd been running on 4 hours of sleep for the past 3 years. He looked exactly like what he was. Invisible. The doors started closing. Hold it! Mason's hand shot out instinctively, triggering the sensor. The doors bounced back open. Victoria Hale stepped inside. Mason's brain stuttered. The CEO never used the regular elevators. She had a private one that went straight to the executive floor. But here she was, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing a coat that probably cost more than Mason's monthly rent. She didn't look at him, just pressed button 22 and stepped back. The doors closed. Mason kept his eyes forward, acutely aware of every breath, every small movement. Victoria stood less than 3 feet away, checking something on her phone with the kind of focused intensity that made junior executives dissolve into stammering apologies. He'd seen her exactly 4 times in the 2 years he'd worked here, always from a distance, always surrounded by senior leadership. Victoria Hale didn't acknowledge people at Mason's level. Hell, she barely acknowledged people 3 levels above him. The elevator hummed upward, floor 7, 8, 9. Then it jerked, hard. The coffee flew from Mason's hand, splashing across the floor as the elevator car shuddered and stopped. The lights flickered once, twice, then settled into a dim emergency mode. Silence. Mason grabbed the handrail, his heart hammering. What? Don't. Victoria's voice cut through the dark, sharp, controlled. But something underneath it made Mason look at her. She was pressed against the back wall, one hand gripped white-knuckled on the railing. Her phone had fallen. She wasn't moving to pick it up. Are you okay? Mason asked carefully. I'm fine. But her breathing had changed, faster, shallower. Mason glanced at the panel. They were stopped between 9 and 10. He pressed the emergency button. A tinny voice crackled through the speaker. We're aware of the issue. Maintenance is responding. Please remain calm. How long? Mason asked. Could be 15 minutes. Could be longer. We'll keep you updated. The speaker went silent. Mason turned back to Victoria. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were fixed on the doors with an intensity that didn't match the situation. Ms. Hale? He kept his voice level. The maintenance team is coming. We're safe. I know that. The words came out clipped, defensive, but her knuckles were still white on the railing. Understanding clicked into place. Mason had seen this before. His late wife, Emma, had struggled with enclosed spaces after a childhood incident in a locked closet. The way Victoria was breathing, the way she couldn't take her eyes off the doors. When I was 8, Mason said quietly, my older brother locked me in a toy chest during hide and seek. Thought it was hilarious. I was stuck in there for 2 hours before my mom found me. Victoria's eyes flicked toward him. Surprised, suspicious. Ever since then, Mason continued, I get uncomfortable in small spaces. Not full panic, but it's there. This feeling like the walls are closer than they should be. He wasn't making it up. The toy chest story was true, but he'd learned to manage it years ago. Right now, though, Victoria needed to know she wasn't alone in whatever she was feeling. How do you handle it? Her voice was quieter now. I focus on something else. Count things. List facts I know for certain. Mason gestured at the elevator. Like, This car is about 7 feet wide by 6 feet deep. The emergency brake system has triple redundancy. There's a ventilation system that cycles fresh air every 90 seconds. We have more oxygen in here than a hospital room. Victoria's breathing slowed slightly. You know a lot about elevator safety. I read the building maintenance manual when I started working here. Mason shrugged. Insomnia. You read weird things at 3 a.m. That's pathetic. Yeah, probably. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. She finally released the railing, though she didn't step away from the wall. You're Mason Reed. It wasn't a question. Operations analysis. You fixed the Jensen forecasting model last quarter. Mason blinked. You know about that? I read every efficiency report that crosses my desk. Your solution saved us 6 weeks of rework. Victoria's eyes were steady on him now. Nobody else caught that error, including the senior analysts who should have. I just noticed the numbers didn't match the "don't downplay it." Her tone left no room for argument. You saw something an entire team missed. That's not luck. Mason didn't know what to say. The CEO of a billion-dollar company had just complimented him on a footnote in a quarterly report most people never read. The elevator shuddered slightly. Victoria tensed. Hey, Mason kept his voice calm. That's normal. The brake system adjusts to maintain stability. Same thing happens a dozen times a day. You just don't notice when the elevator's moving. She nodded, but her jaw was tight. Tell me something, Mason said. What's the most ridiculous business proposal you've ever received? Victoria looked at him like he'd grown a second head. What? I'm serious. Someone must have pitched you something completely insane at some point. She was quiet for a moment. Then, last month, a consultant suggested we replace our entire IT infrastructure with blockchain. For what purpose? He couldn't explain that part, just kept saying blockchain like it was a magic word. Victoria's expression shifted slightly, something almost approaching amusement. He had a 40-slide presentation. 38 of them were just the word blockchain in different fonts. You're making that up. I wish I was. He invoiced us $15,000 for the privilege of wasting 2 hours. Did you pay it? Hell no. Victoria actually smiled now. Small, but real. I had legal send him a bill for our time. Mason laughed. He couldn't help it. The mental image of some overconfident consultant getting counter-invoiced by Victoria Hale was too perfect. What about you? Victoria asked. Worst project you've worked on here? The Hartford merger analysis last year. Spent 6 weeks building a risk assessment model. Presented it to the senior team. They ignored every recommendation and approved the merger anyway. I remember that disaster. Victoria's smile faded. Cost us $40 million when it fell apart. Yeah, well, nobody wanted to hear that the numbers didn't work. Mason shrugged. I learned pretty quickly that being right doesn't matter if you're not important enough for people to listen. That's a cynical view. That's an accurate view. Victoria studied him. Why are you still here then? You're clearly capable of more than operations analysis. Why not leave? Mason looked down at the spilled coffee spreading across the elevator floor. I have a daughter, 7 years old. She needs stability, consistent health insurance, a job that lets me pick her up from school at 3:15 every day. He met Victoria's eyes. So yeah, I'm stuck in a position that doesn't use half my brain, but it keeps her safe. That's what matters. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Not pity. She didn't strike Mason as someone who did pity, but understanding, maybe. Recognition. What's her name? Lily. Does she know what you do? She thinks I work with computers and make charts. Mason smiled. Which is basically true. Last week she asked if I could make a chart showing which Disney princess is the best. I told her that's subjective data and can't be graphed. How did that go over? She's not speaking to me until I admit Moana is objectively superior. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was startling in the quiet elevator, warm and genuine and completely at odds with the ice-cold executive reputation. Smart kid, Victoria said. Too smart. She sees through all my parenting tricks. Good. She'll need that. Victoria's smile faded slightly. The world isn't kind to people who can't see through bullshit. The elevator speaker crackled. Miss Hale, Mr. Reed, maintenance is working on the motor system now. Should have you moving in about 10 minutes. Copy that, Mason called back. Victoria had relaxed considerably. She wasn't pressed against the wall anymore. Her breathing was normal. The tightness around her eyes had eased. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "You know what." She met his gaze directly. "You didn't make a thing out of it. You just talked, like a normal person." "You are a normal person." "No, I'm not." Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact. "I'm a 30-year-old CEO of a company with 8,000 employees and $6 billion in annual revenue. I sit in rooms with men twice my age who resent every breath I take. Normal people don't live like this." "Fair enough." Mason had picked up her phone from the floor, wiped the screen on his jacket, and handed it to her. "But for what it's worth, you handled this better than most people would, including me, probably." "I doubt that." Victoria took the phone. "You're annoyingly calm in a crisis." "Years of practice. Single parenting is just crisis management with smaller humans." She smiled again. "How long have you been on your own?" 3 years. My wife, Emma, she had an undiagnosed heart condition, collapsed at work one day and didn't make it to the hospital." Mason's voice stayed even. He'd told this story enough times that the sharp edges had worn smooth. "Lily was 4, old enough to remember her, young enough that the memories are already fading." "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." They stood in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just present. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Sure." "Do you ever resent it? Being the responsible one, the one who has to keep everything together while everyone else gets to fall apart?" Mason considered that. "Sometimes, usually around 2 a.m. when I'm doing laundry and packing lunches and wondering how other people make this look easy." He paused. "But then Lily laughs at something stupid I said, or she falls asleep on my shoulder watching a movie, and I remember why I do this. It's not about resenting it. It's just the deal." Victoria nodded slowly. "The deal. Yeah, you take care of the people who matter. Everything else is just noise." "That's a better philosophy than most business school graduates have. Business school doesn't teach you how to negotiate with a 7-year-old who refuses to wear anything except her Halloween costume to school." "What was the costume?" "A dinosaur. She wore it for 6 straight days. I gave up." Victoria laughed again. "Strategic surrender." "Exactly." The elevator shuddered, then hummed. The lights brightened. They were moving again. Mason felt the car rise smoothly past floor 10, 11, 12. Victoria straightened her coat, her professional mask sliding back into place. By the time the elevator reached 14, she looked exactly like she had when she'd stepped inside 43 minutes ago. Composed, untouchable, perfect. The doors opened. Mason grabbed his reports from the floor. "This is my stop." "Mason?" He turned back. Victoria was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That Jensen forecasting model. I'm putting your name on the next project review. We're expanding the operations analysis team, and I want your input on the structure. I'm not qualified to cut. I didn't ask if you thought you were qualified. I'm telling you that you are." Her voice had that steel edge again. "The meeting is Thursday at 2. Don't be late." The doors started closing. "Wait, what should I prepare?" "Your actual opinions. Not whatever you think I want to hear." Victoria's eyes held his. "I have enough people telling me what I want to hear. I need someone who will tell me when the numbers don't work." The doors closed. Mason stood in the empty hallway, staring at his reflection in the polished elevator doors. What the hell just happened? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Mason tried to focus on the market analysis report due by end of week, but his brain kept circling back to the elevator, to Victoria's laughter, to the way she'd looked at him when she said, "I need someone who'll tell me when the numbers don't work." At 3:15, he packed up and headed to Lily's school. She burst out of the building like a small explosion, backpack bouncing, brown hair escaping from her ponytail in every direction. Dad, guess what?" Mason caught her in a hug. "What?" "Mrs. Patterson said my story about the space cat was the best in the class. She put it on the wall." "That's amazing, kiddo. I told you that story was good." "You have to say that. You're my dad." Lily grabbed his hand as they started walking. "But Mrs. Patterson doesn't have to say it, so it's real." Fair point. They stopped at the corner store for snacks. Granola bars for Lily, terrible coffee for Mason. The woman behind the counter knew them by name now. That's what happened when you showed up at the same place, same time, every single day for 3 years. Routine, stability. The architecture of a life built around one small person who needed him to be predictable. "How was your day?" Lily asked, swinging his hand as they walked. "Weird, actually." "Good weird or bad weird?" "Not sure yet." Mason squeezed her hand. "I got stuck in an elevator." Lily's eyes went huge. "Were you scared?" "Little bit, but I wasn't alone." "Who was with you?" "My boss. Well, not my direct boss, the boss of the whole company." "Is she nice?" Mason thought about Victoria pressed against the elevator wall, fighting down panic she'd never admit to feeling. About the way she'd laughed when he told her about Lily's Disney princess debate. "Yeah," he said. "I think she is." Thursday at 1:55 p.m., Mason stood outside conference room C, fighting the urge to turn around and run. This was insane. He'd been working in operations analysis for 2 years, barely above entry level. He had no business sitting in a meeting about department restructuring. The door opened. Victoria's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Michelle, gestured him inside. "Mr. Reed, you're right on time." The conference room was full. Mason recognized most of the faces. Senior analysts, department heads, people who'd walked past his desk 1,000 times without seeing him. Victoria sat at the head of the table, reading something on her tablet. She glanced up when Mason entered. "Take a seat." There was exactly one empty chair. Right next to her, Mason sat. David Chen, the VP of Operations, was mid-sentence about efficiency metrics when he noticed Mason. His words stuttered to a stop. "I'm sorry," David said, looking at Victoria. "I thought this was a senior leadership meeting." "It is." Victoria didn't look up from her tablet. "Continue." David's confusion was visible, but he continued. For the next 20 minutes, Mason listened to the senior team discuss restructuring proposals that would affect hundreds of employees. Most of the ideas were sound. A few were actively terrible but wrapped in enough corporate jargon that nobody wanted to challenge them. Victoria listened, occasionally asking pointed questions that made people squirm. Then she turned to Mason. "You've been quiet. What do you think?" Every eye in the room locked onto him. Mason's throat went dry. "About which part?" "All of it." "You read the proposal I sent you yesterday. Give me your analysis." She'd sent him a 100-page restructuring proposal at 11 p.m. Mason had stayed up until 2 a.m. reading it, making notes in the margins, cross-referencing the financial projections against current departmental performance data. He'd assumed it was just background information. Apparently not. "The efficiency goals are aggressive, but achievable," Mason said slowly. "The timeline is realistic if you account for training overlap, but there's a problem with the cost projections." "Explain." Victoria's tone was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. "You're assuming a 15% reduction in operational overhead within the first quarter, but you're not accounting for the productivity drop during transition. Every time you reorganize a team, efficiency falls for at least 6 weeks while people adjust to new systems." Mason pulled up his notes on his phone. "Based on the last 3 restructuring initiatives, you should expect overhead to actually increase by 8% in Q1 before dropping in Q2. If you don't budget for that, you'll hit the 6-month review looking like the whole thing failed." Silence. David Chen's expression had gone from confused to hostile. "That's an overly pessimistic view. We have mitigation strategies, which didn't work last time." Mason met his gaze. The Hartford integration had the exact same mitigation strategies. It still resulted in a 12% productivity drop that lasted 2 months. Hartford was different. How? Mason pulled up another document. Similar team size, similar operational complexity. The only difference is Hartford was a merger, and this is internal restructuring, which actually makes this harder because you're asking people to change systems they've used for years. Victoria leaned back in her chair, watching the exchange. David's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, you're an analyst. You're not seeing the full strategic picture." "You're right," Mason said evenly. "I'm not strategic leadership. I'm the person who'll have to implement whatever you decide, and I'm telling you the numbers don't support your timeline." "Then what do you suggest?" Victoria asked. Mason hesitated. This was the moment. He could back down, apologize for overstepping, retreat to invisibility. Or he could answer honestly. Push the efficiency targets to Q2, he said. Give the teams 8 weeks to transition instead of 4. Yes, it delays the cost savings, but it also means you actually hit your targets instead of missing them and having to explain why to the board. More silence. Then Victoria nodded. Revised timeline. 8 weeks transition, efficiency targets moved to Q2. She looked at her assistant. Michelle, update the proposal and recirculate by end of day. David looked like he'd swallowed something sharp. Victoria, I really think... You think we should set ourselves up to fail in 6 months so the spreadsheet looks good today? Victoria's voice was ice. I disagree. We're going with Mason's timeline. The meeting continued, but the dynamic had shifted. People kept glancing at Mason, trying to figure out who he was and why Victoria was listening to him. Mason kept his mouth shut unless directly asked a question, but when Victoria asked, he answered. Honestly. Even when his answers contradicted the senior people in the room, especially then. The meeting ended at 3:45. Mason grabbed his things, already mentally calculating if he could still make it to Lily's school on time. Mason, stay. He froze. The room emptied. David Chen was the last to leave, shooting Mason a look that promised consequences. When the door closed, Victoria stood and walked to the window. Manhattan sprawled below them, all glass and steel and endless motion. You realize what you just did, she said quietly. I disagreed with a VP in front of the entire senior team. Mason's stomach churned. Yeah, I realize. David Chen has been here for 12 years. He has the board's ear. He does not like being contradicted. I know. So why did you do it? Mason met her eyes. You asked for my actual opinion, not what I thought you wanted to hear. Victoria smiled, sharp and satisfied. Good answer. She walked back to the table, gathered her materials. You're going to make enemies doing this. People who think you're getting preferential treatment because of what happened in the elevator. They're going to try to undermine you. I can handle it. Can you? Victoria paused at the door. Because this is just the beginning. If you're going to work with me, really work with me, you need to be prepared for what that means. The scrutiny, the politics, the people who'll assume you slept your way into influence. Mason felt heat rise in his face. I would never... I know that, but they don't. Victoria's expression was unreadable. So I need to know if you can handle it. Because once you step into this world, there's no going back to invisible. Mason thought about his daughter, about the stability he'd promised her, about the safe, predictable life he'd built where nobody noticed him and nobody asked him to be more than he was. Then he thought about Victoria in that elevator, laughing at his stupid stories. About the way she'd looked at him when she said, I need someone who'll tell me when the numbers don't work. About the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of more than surviving. I can handle it, he said. Victoria nodded once. Good. Because tomorrow you're sitting in on the client presentation for the Morrison account. I want you reviewing the financial models before we go in. I don't have access to those files. You do now. Michelle will send you the credentials tonight. Victoria headed for the door, then paused. And Mason? Don't be late tomorrow. The meeting starts at 7:30. She left. Mason stood alone in the empty conference room, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. His phone buzzed, a message from the school. Lily's in aftercare. No rush. He'd missed pickup. Mason closed his eyes. The deal. Take care of the people who matter. Everything else is noise. But standing here, in this room where people made decisions that shaped companies and careers and lives, he could feel something shifting, some fundamental change in who he was and what he was capable of becoming. For the first time in 3 years, Mason Reed wasn't invisible, and he had no idea if that was a good thing or the biggest mistake of his life. The Morrison presentation was supposed to start at 7:30. At 7:15, Mason stood in the lobby of the Meridian Hotel, watching executives file into the conference center wearing suits that cost more than his car. He'd been up since 4 a.m. reviewing financial models, double-checking projections, running scenarios until his eyes burned. The data didn't add up. Victoria arrived at 7:20, flanked by 2 senior VPs Mason vaguely recognized. She spotted him immediately. Walk with me. Mason fell into step beside her. The VPs peeled off toward the coffee station, leaving them alone in the corridor. You get the files? Victoria asked, her heels clicking against marble. Yeah, there's a problem. She stopped. What kind of problem? The revenue projections for Q3 and Q4. They're inflated by at least 18%. Someone cherry-picked the best-case scenario data and ignored the risk factors. Mason pulled up his tablet, showing her the spreadsheet he'd built at 5 a.m. If Morrison signs based on these numbers and we don't deliver, they'll have legal grounds to pull the entire contract. Victoria's jaw tightened. Who built the original model? David Chen's team. Of course it was. She took the tablet, scanning Mason's corrections. Her eyes moved fast, absorbing information the way other people breathed. This changes the entire pitch. I know, I'm sorry. I should have caught it earlier. You caught it with 15 minutes to spare. That's better than nobody catching it at all. Victoria handed back the tablet. Can you present the corrected version? Mason's stomach dropped. Me? You're the one who's supposed to... I can't present numbers I just learned about 60 seconds ago. You've been living in this data since last night. Victoria checked her phone. Morrison's CEO is walking in right now. I need someone up there who knows every cell in that spreadsheet. That's you. Victoria, I'm not... Don't tell me what you're not. Her voice went sharp. Tell me if you can do this, or if I need to find someone else in the next 10 minutes. Mason looked at her. Really looked. There was no doubt in her expression, no hesitation. She believed he could do this. He wasn't sure if she was right, but he nodded anyway. Yeah, I can do it. Good. You're on in 5. The conference room was already packed. Mason counted at least 30 people. Morrison's entire executive team. Hale Industries' senior leadership, lawyers, financial advisors, assistants taking notes. The kind of room where careers were made or destroyed before lunch. Victoria walked to the front. Every conversation stopped. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Her voice carried effortlessly across the room. Before we begin, there's been a development with our financial projections. My colleague Mason Reed will walk you through the updated analysis. David Chen's head snapped up from the far side of the table. His expression went from confusion to fury in about half a second. Mason moved to the presentation screen, connecting his tablet. His hands were steady. That surprised him. Good morning, he said. I'm going to be direct because your time is valuable. The original revenue projections you received last week were inaccurate. Murmurs rippled through the room. Morrison's CFO leaned forward. Mason brought up the first slide. The initial model projected a compound growth rate of 22% over 18 months. That number was based on best-case market conditions and ignored 3 significant risk factors. He pulled up the corrected data. When you account for regulatory changes in the European markets, increased competition from emerging providers, and the projected slowdown in enterprise spending, the realistic growth rate is closer to 18%. That's a significant difference, Morrison's CEO said. Gray-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd built a company from nothing and didn't tolerate bullshit. It is, Mason agreed, which is why we're presenting the correction now instead of 6 months into a partnership built on false expectations. David Chen stood up. If I could just clarify, Mr. Reed has the floor, Victoria said quietly. The room went silent again. Mason continued. He walked them through every correction, every assumption, every piece of data that had been manipulated or ignored in the original model. He didn't soften it, didn't make excuses, just presented the numbers as they actually existed. When he finished, Morrison's CEO sat back in his chair. That's either the most honest pitch I've ever heard, or you're trying to lowball your own value. Neither, Mason said. I'm telling you what we can actually deliver. If you want someone to promise you the moon and deliver a flashlight, there are plenty of firms that will take that meeting. We're not one of them. The room was dead quiet. Then Morrison laughed. Actually laughed. I like this kid. What's your name again? Mason Reed. Well, Mason Reed, you just talked me out of a 22% return and somehow made me more interested in signing. He looked at Victoria. This how you usually run presentations? Only when the numbers demand honesty, Victoria said smoothly. Good, because the last 3 firms we met with spent 2 hours blowing smoke up my ass. Morrison stood, extending his hand to Mason. You've got yourself a deal, but I want him on the implementation team. Non-negotiable. Victoria smiled. Done. The handshakes happened fast after that. Lawyers started comparing contract language. Assistants scheduled follow-up meetings. The room dissolved into productive chaos. Mason stood off to the side, trying to process what just happened. David Chen appeared at his elbow. Up close, the VP's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That was quite a performance," David said quietly. "Undermining weeks of work from my team, making us look incompetent in front of a major client." "I corrected inaccurate data," Mason said. "That's not undermining. That's doing the job." "Is that what you think this was? The job?" David's voice dropped lower. "You just made an enemy of everyone who worked on that original model. And for what? To impress Victoria? To play hero? To keep us from getting sued 6 months from now. You're out of your depth, Reed. Way out. And when you inevitably screw up, don't expect anyone to catch you." David walked away before Mason could respond. Victoria materialized beside him. "Ignore him." Kind of hard to ignore when he's right about the enemy thing. David's been coasting on his reputation for 5 years. You just reminded everyone in this room that reputation doesn't matter if the work is sloppy. Victoria glanced at her phone. "I have back-to-back meetings until 6. Come to my office at 7. We need to talk about your new role." "What new role?" But she was already walking away, pulled into a conversation with Morrison's legal team. Mason left the hotel feeling like he'd just run a marathon. His phone showed 12 missed calls. 3 from Lily's school. Shit. He called back immediately. "Mr. Reed?" The school secretary sounded annoyed. "We've been trying to reach you about Lily's field trip tomorrow. She's the only student who hasn't turned in a permission slip." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll sign it tonight." "The deadline was yesterday. Without the form, she can't attend." Lily was going to be devastated. She'd been talking about the Science Museum trip for weeks. "Is there any way—" "Policy is policy, Mr. Reed. Perhaps next time you could prioritize school communications." The line went dead. Mason stood on the sidewalk outside the Meridian, watching cabs flow past. A year ago, his biggest stress was making sure Lily's lunches were packed and her homework was done. Now he was presenting to CEOs and making enemies of VPs and forgetting the basic shit that actually mattered. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Good work today. Don't second-guess yourself." He stared at the message for a long moment, then pocketed his phone and headed back to the office. That night, Lily cried when he explained about the field trip. Not the loud, dramatic kind of crying, the quiet, disappointed kind that was somehow worse. "Everyone else is going," she said, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "I'm going to be the only one stuck in the boring classroom. I know, kiddo, I messed up. I'm really sorry." "You always mess up lately." Her voice was small. "You're never home. You forget everything. It's like you don't even care anymore." The words hit harder than they should have. "Lily, that's not— I'm going to bed." She left the kitchen before Mason could figure out what to say. Her bedroom door closed with a soft click that felt louder than slamming. Mason sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the debris of another failed dinner, takeout containers, unopened mail, Lily's homework he was supposed to check 3 days ago. His phone buzzed. Work email. Another one. And another. He turned the phone face down and didn't look at it for the rest of the night. At 7 p.m. the next evening, Mason knocked on Victoria's office door. "Come in." The office was glass and steel and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Manhattan lit up against the darkness, a view that made Mason feel like he was floating above the world instead of living in it. Victoria was at her desk, reading something on her computer. She didn't look up. "Close the door." Mason did. "Sit." He sat in one of the uncomfortable modern chairs facing her desk. Victoria finished whatever she was reading, then turned her full attention to him. "Morrison wants you on the implementation team. That means you're moving out of operations analysis." "To where?" "Strategic development. You'll report directly to me." She pulled up an organizational chart on her screen, turned it so Mason could see. "New title. Significant pay increase. Access to executive-level projects. You'll be in the room for major decisions." Mason stared at the chart. His name was 3 levels higher than it had been this morning. "This is insane," he said quietly. "This is what you earned. I've been here 2 years. Most of the people in strategic development have been here for 10. And none of them caught the errors you caught. None of them had the guts to present corrections in front of a room full of executives. Victoria leaned back in her chair. You think I'm promoting you because I like you? I'm promoting you because you're good at this, better than people with twice your experience. People are going to say, Dee, I don't care what people say. Her voice went flat. I care about results. You deliver results. That's all that matters. Mason wanted to believe her, but he kept thinking about David Chen's expression, about the whispers he'd already heard in the break room, about Lily crying because he'd forgotten another permission slip. Can I ask you something? He said. Go ahead. Why me? You could have anyone, people with MBAs from schools I couldn't afford to visit, people who've been groomed for leadership their whole careers. Why take a chance on a single dad who barely scraped through state college? Victoria was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer. When I was 23, I was the youngest VP this company ever hired. Everyone said I only got the position because my father was on the board. They said I was unqualified, inexperienced, that I'd crash and burn within a year. Your father was on the board? For 6 months. Then he died. Heart attack during a golf game. She looked out at the city. Suddenly I didn't have his protection anymore, just his reputation and a company full of people waiting for me to fail. But you didn't. No. I worked twice as hard as everyone else. Made decisions nobody else had the spine to make. Fired people who needed firing, promoted people who deserved it, even when it pissed off the old guard. Victoria turned back to him. You know what I learned? The people who earn their position are always better than the people who inherit it. You've earned this, Mason. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Mason didn't know what to say to that. One more thing, Victoria said. This promotion comes with expectations. Late nights, travel, high-pressure situations where failure isn't an option. Her eyes held his. I need to know you can handle that. Because if your daughter needs you to be home at 3:15 every day, this isn't going to work. There it was. The question he'd been avoiding since the moment she offered him the job. I have help now, Mason said slowly. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, no relation to David, she's retired. She's been asking if she can pick up Lily sometimes. Says she misses having kids around. That's not an answer. I can handle it. Mason met her gaze. I'm not going to lie and say it'll be easy, but I can make it work. Victoria studied him. Okay. You start Monday. Michelle will send you the onboarding materials. Mason stood to leave. Mason? He turned back. Victoria's expression had shifted, still professional, but something else underneath. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be great at this. Thanks. Don't thank me. Just prove me right. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Mason's new role meant 14-hour days, emergency calls at midnight, presentations he had to build from scratch with 4 hours' notice. He sat in meetings with executives who resented his presence and made it known through carefully polite hostility. He reviewed contracts, analyzed risk assessments, built financial models that other people would present as their own work. And he was good at it, better than good. The strategies he suggested actually worked. The problems he identified were real. Slowly, grudgingly, people started listening when he spoke. But the cost was mounting. Mrs. Chen picked up Lily from school most days now. Mason made it home by 7 if he was lucky, 8:30 if he wasn't. Bedtime stories became rushed, distracted affairs where Lily could tell he was only half present. Homework help happened at the kitchen table while Mason answered work emails with his other hand. Dad? Lily asked one Thursday night, pushing her math worksheet away. Do you like your new job? Mason looked up from his laptop. What? Your job. Do you like it? It's, well, complicated. That means no. Lily picked at the edge of her worksheet. You seem sad all the time now. I'm not sad, kiddo, just tired. That's what Mom used to say. Lily's voice went quiet. Before she got sick. Mason's chest tightened. Lily, that's different. Is it? She looked at him with eyes too old for 7. You're never here. And when you are here, you're on your phone. It's like you're disappearing. Mason closed his laptop. Come here. Lily climbed into his lap, something she was getting too big for but still needed sometimes. I know things have been different lately, Mason said carefully. And I know I've been distracted. But I'm not disappearing. I'm right here. Are you? The question hung in the air between them. Mason didn't have a good answer. Friday afternoon, Victoria's assistant Michelle appeared at Mason's desk. Ms. Hale wants to see you, conference room A. Mason grabbed his tablet and headed upstairs. Conference room A was the big one, the glass-walled space where major deals happened. Victoria was alone when he arrived, standing at the window with her phone pressed to her ear. I don't care what the board thinks. Tell them to review the projections again. She paused, listening. Fine. Schedule it for Monday morning. I'll handle it myself. She hung up and turned to Mason. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The Westfield acquisition. We've been negotiating for 8 months. The deal was supposed to close next week. Victoria pulled up documents on the conference room screen. This morning, their CEO called to say they're getting cold feet. Something about our Q3 performance not meeting expectations. Mason scanned the documents. Our Q3 numbers were solid. They were, but Westfield's board is spooked by rumors that we're having internal instability. Apparently someone's been feeding them stories about executive turnover and strategic uncertainty. Who? Victoria's expression went cold. I have my suspicions. But right now that doesn't matter. What matters is saving this deal. Westfield represents 18% of our projected growth for next year. If this falls apart, it affects everything. What do you need from me? I need you to come to San Francisco, tomorrow. Westfield's CEO agreed to a face-to-face meeting Sunday afternoon. I want you there to walk through the financials, answer their concerns, show them we're not some unstable house of cards. Mason's brain stuttered. Tomorrow? As in tomorrow Saturday? Flight leaves at 6 a.m. We'll be back Sunday night. I can't. Lily has a birthday party on Sunday. I promised her I'd take her. Victoria's expression didn't change. I understand that's difficult, but this is part of the job, Mason. I told you there would be times when... I know what you told me. Mason's voice came out sharper than he intended. But this is my daughter's best friend's birthday. She's been looking forward to it for weeks. I already bailed on the museum trip. I can't keep doing this to her. Then find someone else to take her to the party. It's not about someone else taking her. It's about me being there. Victoria crossed her arms. So what are you saying? You can't do the job? I'm saying I need more than 12 hours notice before you ask me to fly across the country. This is the job, Mason. Crises don't wait for convenient timing. Her voice was ice now. I need someone I can count on when things fall apart. If that's not you, tell me now. They stared at each other across the conference table. Mason thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made 3 years ago to always put her first, about the look on her face when he explained he'd missed another school event. Then he thought about Victoria in that elevator, about Morrison's handshake, about the way it felt to walk into a room and actually matter. I'll make it work, he said quietly. I'll be on the flight. Victoria nodded. Michelle will send you the details. Mason left before he could change his mind. That night, he explained to Lily that he had to go to California for work, that Mrs. Chen would take her to the birthday party, that he was sorry, but this was important. Lily didn't cry this time. She just nodded and went back to coloring. Somehow that was worse. The San Francisco meeting was a disaster, not because of the presentation. Mason's financial analysis was solid, and Westfield's concerns were based on rumors that fell apart under actual scrutiny. The deal was back on track by Sunday afternoon. The disaster was personal. Mason's phone had died somewhere over Nebraska, and he didn't realize until they landed that he'd missed 6 calls from Mrs. Chen. When he finally got her on the phone, her voice was tight with controlled panic. Lily fell at the party, hit her head on the corner of a table. They took her to the emergency room. Mason's entire world stopped. What? She's okay. Just needed a few stitches. But Mason, she kept asking for you. I didn't know what to tell her. I'm getting on the next flight. I'll be there in... The doctor already discharged her. She's at my place watching TV. Mrs. Chen paused. She won't talk to me, just sits there staring at the screen. Mason looked at Victoria across the airport terminal. She was on her phone, probably already moving on to the next crisis. I have to go, he told Mrs. Chen. Tell Lily I'm coming. He hung up and walked over to Victoria. I need to catch an earlier flight. She looked up. What happened? Lily got hurt. She's okay, but I need to get home. Victoria's expression shifted. Go. I'll handle the follow-up with Westfield. You sure? Mason, go. Your daughter needs you. He made it back to New York by 9 p.m. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, relief visible on her face. Lily was on the couch, a small bandage above her left eyebrow. She didn't look up when Mason walked in. Hey, kiddo. Nothing. Mason sat beside her. Mrs. Chen told me what happened. That must have been scary. It hurt. Lily's voice was flat. But you weren't there. I know. I'm sorry. You're always sorry. She finally looked at him, and Mason saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not anger, resignation, like she'd already accepted that this was how things were now. You promised you'd be different than other dads. You promised you'd always be there. I am here. No, you're not. Not really. Lily turned back to the TV. You're somewhere else all the time, even when you're in the same room. Mason didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. He'd been so focused on proving he belonged in Victoria's world that he'd stopped fully inhabiting his own. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Mason sat at his kitchen table staring at his laptop. An email from Victoria had come through an hour ago. Westfield signed. Deal closes Friday. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. He should have felt proud, accomplished. Instead, he just felt hollow. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is David Chen. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., coffee shop on 43rd. Come alone. Mason stared at the message. Nothing good ever started with come alone. But he texted back anyway. I'll be there. Because at this point, what did he have to lose? The coffee shop on 43rd was the kind of place that existed in every city. Worn booths, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly dead. Coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since yesterday. David Chen was already there when Mason arrived at 6:55, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall like he was expecting trouble. Mason slid into the seat across from him. You're early, David said. So are you. They sat in silence for a moment. A tired waitress appeared, poured coffee neither of them had asked for, and disappeared again. David wrapped his hands around the mug. I'm going to be direct because I don't like you and you don't like me, so there's no point pretending otherwise. Okay. Victoria's protecting you. You realize that, right? David leaned forward. Every time someone questions your qualifications, she shuts them down. Every time you make a mistake, and you will make mistakes, she covers for you. You think that's because you're special? Because you earned it? Mason kept his expression neutral. Why don't you tell me what you think it is? I think you got stuck in an elevator with the CEO and somehow charmed your way into her good graces. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe it's not. But either way, you're in over your head. David took a sip of his coffee, grimaced. The Westfield deal? That should have been mine. I've been working that acquisition for 8 months, but Victoria pulled me off it and sent you instead. She needed someone who could fix the financial presentation on short notice. She needed someone she could control. David's voice went cold. You think you're the first person she's elevated like this? 3 years ago, it was Marcus Webb. Brilliant strategist, everyone said. Victoria gave him the same treatment, promoted him fast, brought him into the inner circle, made him feel indispensable. Then he made one bad call on a merger, and she threw him under the bus so fast his head spun. He's working at a mid-tier consulting firm in Chicago now. Mason had heard the name Marcus Webb before, whispered in break-room conversations that stopped when he walked in. Why are you telling me this? Mason asked. Because I'm not the only one who sees what's happening. There's a group of us, senior leadership, who've been here long enough to recognize the pattern. David pulled out his phone, showed Mason a message thread. Names Mason recognized. VPs, directors, people with real power. We're documenting everything, every favor Victoria gives you, every rule she bends, every time she prioritizes you over people who've actually earned their positions. For what purpose? Insurance. When this inevitably blows up, and it will, we want to make sure the damage doesn't take down the whole company. David pocketed his phone. I'm giving you a chance to walk away now. Take a lateral move to another department. Get out from under Victoria's shadow before you get burned. Mason looked at him. Really looked. David wasn't lying. He genuinely believed he was doing the right thing, protecting the company from what he saw as Victoria's reckless favoritism. I appreciate the warning, Mason said carefully, but I'm not interested in a lateral move. Then you're an idiot? Maybe. But I'm not running because a few senior VPs are pissed that someone new is getting opportunities they think should be theirs. David's jaw tightened. You don't understand how this works. You think competence matters? Talent matters? In a company this size, politics is everything. And right now you're on the wrong side of the politics. I'm on Victoria's side. That seems like the right side to me. Until it's not. David stood, dropped a $5 bill on the table for the coffee. When this falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you. He left. Mason sat alone in the booth, staring at his untouched coffee. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Need you there. Bring the Westfield closure analysis. He texted back a confirmation, then sat there for another 10 minutes trying to figure out if David was right. The board meeting was exactly as hostile as Mason expected. 12 board members sat around an enormous table in a room designed to make visitors feel small. Mason recognized a few faces from photos in the lobby. Industry titans, investors with portfolios bigger than some countries' GDP, the kind of people who shaped markets with casual conversations. Victoria sat at the head of the table, looking like she belonged there, which she did. But the tension in the room suggested not everyone agreed. Before we move to the Westfield discussion, said an older man Mason didn't recognize, I'd like to address a concern several board members have raised regarding recent personnel decisions. Victoria's expression didn't change. Which decisions specifically? The rapid advancement of certain employees without standard vetting procedures. The man glanced at Mason. Mr. Reed's promotion to strategic development after only 2 years with the company has raised questions about favoritism and proper oversight. Mason felt every eye in the room land on him. Mason's promotion was based on performance, Victoria said evenly. He's delivered results on every project assigned to him, including saving the Morrison account and closing the Westfield deal. With your direct support and intervention, another board member chimed in, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair. We're concerned about the optics of such obvious preferential treatment. Optics? Victoria's voice went dangerously quiet. We're talking about a man who caught a $20 million error in our Morrison presentation, who rebuilt our Westfield analysis in 48 hours when the original team failed. You're concerned about optics while he's delivering actual value? We're concerned, the older man said, that your judgment may be compromised regarding Mr. Reed specifically. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Mason's face went hot. He started to stand, to defend himself, to say something. Don't. Victoria's voice was sharp. She wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were locked on the board. If you have concerns about my judgment, say it directly instead of hiding behind coded language. Fine. The steel-haired woman leaned forward. We're concerned you're showing favoritism to an employee you may be personally involved with. And before you deny it, we've seen the reports. Late-night meetings, private dinners, travel arrangements where you specifically requested him on your team. I specifically request competent people on my team, Victoria said. That's called management. It's called a conflict of interest if there's a personal relationship involved. The room went completely silent. Victoria stood slowly. When she spoke, her voice could have cut glass. My personal life is none of this board's business unless it affects company performance. Show me one project where Mason's involvement led to a negative outcome. Show me one decision where personal feelings compromised results. You can't, because it hasn't happened. Yet, the older man said quietly. Yet, Victoria agreed. So until it does, I suggest we focus on actual business instead of gossip. Victoria, the Westfield deal closed Friday, 18 months ahead of projected timeline. Revenue projections exceed our initial estimates by 12%. Mason's financial analysis was instrumental in making that happen. Victoria pulled up documents on the conference room screen. You want to question my judgment? Question results. Everything else is noise. The meeting continued, but the damage was done. Mason could feel the board members' eyes on him throughout the rest of the discussion, evaluating, judging, finding him wanting. When it finally ended, Victoria caught his arm as they left the room. Ignore them. They think we're sleeping together. Mason's voice was low, urgent. That's what they were implying, right? They were implying exactly that. Are we sleeping together? The question came out before Mason could stop it. Victoria's expression was unreadable. That's an interesting question to ask in a corporate hallway. I need to know what this is. Because if the board thinks, if people are saying, Mason ran a hand through his hair. I have a daughter who depends on me. I can't afford to lose this job because of rumors about something that may or may not be happening. May or may not be happening, Victoria repeated softly. That's one way to put it. Victoria, not here. She glanced down the hallway where assistants and junior executives were pretending not to watch them. My office, 20 minutes. She walked away before Mason could respond. 20 minutes later, Mason stood in Victoria's office while she closed the door behind him. The click of the lock felt louder than it should have. Sit, she said. Mason sat. Victoria moved to the window, her back to him. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind her, glass and steel and endless ambition. When I was 25, she said quietly, I was engaged. His name was Andrew. Harvard MBA, investment banking, family money, everything my father thought I should want. Mason waited. 3 weeks before the wedding, I found out he'd been telling people that once we were married, I'd step back from the company, focus on family, let him handle the serious business while I played at being executive. Victoria's reflection in the window was expressionless. I broke off the engagement. My father was furious, said I was throwing away a perfect match because of pride. What did you say? I said I'd rather be alone than with someone who saw me as an accessory to his ambition. She turned to face him. I haven't dated anyone seriously since then. Haven't let anyone close enough to matter. It's easier that way, cleaner. Until a single father got stuck in an elevator with me and treated me like a person instead of a title. Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. Until someone walked into a boardroom full of executives and told them they were wrong without flinching. Until I met someone who made me remember what it feels like to be seen. Mason's chest tightened. Victoria. I'm not good at this, she said. Feelings. Vulnerability. All the things normal people seem to manage without thinking. I've spent 10 years building walls so high nobody could see over them. And then you showed up and somehow found a door I didn't know was there. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me if this is real. Victoria moved closer. Because if it's just gratitude for the promotion or ambition or whatever else people will assume, then we stop now. I don't do complicated. It's real, Mason said. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's real. I think about you constantly. I look for reasons to stay late so I can see you. When something happens, good or bad, you're the first person I want to tell. He stood, closing the distance between them. But I have a daughter who already lost one parent. I can't lose this job. I can't mess this up. Then don't mess it up. It's not that simple. The board already thinks. I don't care what the board thinks. Victoria's voice was fierce now. I've spent my entire career doing what other people expected. Following rules, playing politics, being the perfect CEO they all needed me to be. And I'm exhausted, Mason. I'm 30 years old and I'm so tired of pretending I don't want things. What do you want? She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was months of tension collapsing into a single moment, all the careful distance they'd maintained burning away like paper. Mason's brain short-circuited. This was his boss. This was the CEO of a billion-dollar company. This was... Victoria pulled back, breathing hard. Still think it's not real? I think we're both about to make a huge mistake. Probably. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. But I'm done pretending I care about what probably is right. Mason kissed her this time, slower, deeper, like he was memorizing the moment because he knew it would change everything. When they finally broke apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. This stays between us, she said quietly, not because I'm ashamed, but because the moment people know, everything becomes about that instead of the work. And I need you to succeed on your own merits, not as the CEO's boyfriend. Boyfriend, Mason repeated. That's what we're calling this. Do you have a better term? No, just feels strange to have a title for something that started in an elevator. Victoria laughed softly. Everything about this is strange, but strange doesn't mean wrong. Mason's phone buzzed. He pulled it out reluctantly. A message from Mrs. Chen. Lily's asking when you'll be home. She seems sad. Reality crashed back in. I have to go, Mason said. Victoria stepped back immediately. Of course. I'm not... This isn't me running away. But Lily's been through a lot lately, and I need to... You don't have to explain. Victoria's professional mask was sliding back into place. Your daughter comes first. That's not negotiable. Mason headed for the door, then paused. What happens now? Now you go home to Lily. Tomorrow we go back to work, and we figure out the rest as we go. Victoria's expression softened slightly. One crisis at a time, right? Yeah, one crisis at a time. Mason left before he could do something stupid like stay. The next 3 weeks were a delicate balancing act Mason wasn't sure he was pulling off. At work, he and Victoria maintained strict professionalism. No private meetings that weren't business-related. No lingering glances. No indication they were anything other than CEO and employee working on high-stakes projects. But late nights became something else entirely. After Lily went to sleep, Mason's phone would buzz. Sometimes it was Victoria asking about a contract clause or financial projection. Sometimes it was just her voice on the other end saying she couldn't sleep and wanted to hear him talk. They met for dinner once, at a restaurant 40 blocks from the office, where nobody from Hale Industries would recognize them. Sat across from each other like normal people having a normal date, talking about everything except work. Tell me about Emma, Victoria said over dessert. Mason looked up, surprised. Why? Because she was important to you. Because Lily mentions her sometimes, and I want to understand. So Mason told her about meeting Emma in a college literature class where they were both struggling through Paradise Lost, about their terrible first apartment with the heater that only worked on Tuesdays, about the way Emma laughed at her own jokes before she finished telling them. She would have liked you, Mason said finally. She had this thing about people who said what they meant, no games. You would have driven each other crazy and been best friends within a week. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Do you feel guilty about this? Sometimes. Not because I think Emma would be angry. She'd probably tell me I'm an idiot for overthinking it. Mason traced the rim of his water glass. But because moving forward feels like leaving her further behind, does that make sense? Yeah, it does. They didn't go home together that night. Couldn't risk it. But Victoria kissed him in the shadow between streetlights, hidden from the world, and it felt like the most honest thing Mason had done in years. At home, Lily was adjusting to the new normal with the resilience of childhood and the skepticism of someone who'd been disappointed before. Is your boss nice to you? She asked one night during dinner. Mason looked up from his laptop. What? Miss Hale. Is she nice? Yeah, she's nice. Why? Lily shrugged, pushing pasta around her plate. You smile more when you talk about work now. You used to just look tired. I still look tired. Different tired. Like you're tired but happy, instead of tired and sad. Mason closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. Do I seem happier? Sometimes, when you're not forgetting stuff. Lily's expression was serious. Are you going to marry her? Mason nearly choked on his water. What? No, where did that come from? Jessica at school said when grown-ups smile about other grown-ups, it means they're in love and going to get married. Jessica at school is 7 years old and doesn't know what she's talking about. So you're not in love with Ms. Hale? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Mason didn't have a prepared answer. It's complicated, kiddo. That's what adults say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. Lily took a bite of pasta. I don't mind if you like her. Just don't forget about me. I could never forget about you. You forgot the field trip permission slip, and the parent-teacher conference last week, and my doctor's appointment yesterday. Each one hit like a punch. Mason had rescheduled the doctor's appointment twice already. Mrs. Chen had covered the parent-teacher conference. The field trip was still a sore subject. You're right, Mason said quietly. I've been messing up, but I'm trying to do better. Trying doesn't count if it doesn't work. She was 7 years old and already understood more about broken promises than Mason wished she had to. That night, after Lily was asleep, Mason sat at the kitchen table staring at his calendar. Color-coded blocks representing meetings, deadlines, travel. Lily's schedule overlaid in different colors. School events, activities, appointments he'd already missed or would probably miss in the future. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Can't sleep. You awake? Yeah, want to talk? Mason looked at the calendar, at the impossible math of being present in two different lives that kept pulling him in opposite directions. Can I call you? Of course. He dialed. She picked up on the first ring. Hey. Victoria's voice was soft in his ear, different from the boardroom voice everyone else heard. I need to tell you something, Mason said, and I don't know how to say it without sounding like I'm making excuses. Just say it. I'm drowning. The admission felt like failure. This job, being a dad, trying to figure out what we are, I can't do all of it well. And the thing that's suffering most is Lily. She's the one who matters most, and she's getting the worst version of me. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. What do you need? I don't know. Time, maybe. Space to figure out how to balance this. Do you want to step back? From the job or from us? I don't want to step back from either, but I don't know how to keep both without losing Lily in the process. Then we find a way. Victoria's voice was firm. You tell me when you need to leave early for school events. You block time on your calendar that's non-negotiable. You set boundaries and I respect them. The board already thinks you're showing me favoritism. Let them think whatever they want. Your daughter is 7 years old and she needs her father. That's not favoritism. That's basic human decency. Mason felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's necessary. He could hear her moving around, probably pacing her apartment the way she did when she was thinking. I've spent 10 years putting work above everything else. It's made me successful. It's also made me lonely as hell. I don't want that for you. What do you want for me? I want you to be the father Lily deserves and the partner I need. In that order. And if those two things conflict, then Lily wins. Every time. No question. Mason closed his eyes, letting the words sink in. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. They talked for another hour. About nothing important, about everything. Victoria told him about the apartment she was renovating uptown, how the contractor kept finding new problems that added to the budget. Mason told her about Lily's latest obsession with learning magic tricks, how she'd been practicing card shuffles until her hands hurt. Normal conversation between two people who cared about each other. When they finally hung up, Mason felt steadier than he had in weeks. The relative peace lasted exactly 4 days. Monday morning, Mason arrived at work to find his desk access had been revoked. His computer login didn't work. His employee badge wouldn't open the secure doors to the strategic development floor. He found Michelle at her desk outside Victoria's office. What's going on? My access is locked out. Michelle's expression was carefully neutral. Ms. Hale is in a meeting. I'll let her know you're here. Michelle, what happened? I really can't say. Just wait here. 20 minutes later, Victoria's office door opened. She looked like she hadn't slept. When she saw Mason, something flickered across her face, relief mixed with something else he couldn't identify. Come in. Close the door. Mason did. What's happening? Victoria handed him a document. This arrived this morning. Formal complaint filed with HR by 6 senior executives, including David Chen. They're alleging that I've created a hostile work environment through favoritism, that your rapid advancement is evidence of improper conduct, and that our personal relationship constitutes a conflict of interest that requires immediate investigation. Mason read through the document, his stomach sinking with each paragraph. They had dates, specific examples. The Morrison presentation, the Westfield trip, every late-night meeting, every project where Victoria had chosen him over more experienced candidates. It looked damning because parts of it were true. What does this mean? Mason asked. It means HR is launching a formal investigation. Until it's complete, you're on administrative leave with pay. No access to company systems or buildings, no contact with me regarding work matters. Victoria's voice was flat, professional, but her hands were clenched tight. I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming. How long? 2 weeks minimum, maybe longer depending on what they find. And if they find evidence of a relationship? Then we both face consequences. Me more than you, probably. Board could vote to remove me as CEO. You'd likely be terminated. Mason felt the floor drop out from under him. I should resign, right now, before this goes any further. No. Victoria, if I leave voluntarily, then they win. Then we're admitting there was something wrong with your promotions, with your work, with everything you've accomplished. Victoria finally met his eyes. You earned your position, Mason. Every project, every success. You didn't sleep your way into this job, and I won't let them pretend you did. But we are sleeping together. We are. And that's between us. It doesn't change the fact that you're brilliant at this work. It doesn't erase the Morrison account or the Westfield deal or the dozen other projects where you proved you belong here. Mason wanted to believe her, but the document in his hands told a different story. I have a daughter to support, he said quietly. I can't risk losing this job to prove a point. You won't lose the job. I won't let that happen. You might not have a choice. They stared at each other across her desk. Everything they'd built over the past months, the trust, the partnership, the fragile connection they'd been so careful to protect, felt like it was crumbling. I need you to trust me, Victoria said. Can you do that? Mason thought about Lily asking if he was going to marry Victoria, about the field trips he'd missed and the promises he'd broken, about the 7-year-old girl who'd already lost one parent and couldn't afford to lose the stability her father provided. I trust you, he said, but I also need to protect my daughter. And if this investigation finds what they're looking for, then we deal with it, together. Victoria came around the desk, took his hands. I'm not throwing you to the wolves, Mason. Whatever happens, we face it together. Her phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again. You should answer that, Mason said. Victoria looked at the caller ID, her expression hardening. It's the board chairman. This is about to get worse before it gets better. She answered, putting it on speaker. Victoria, we need you in the boardroom, now. I'll be there in 5 minutes. This can't wait. The investigation has uncovered... The chairman paused. Just get down here. The line went dead. Victoria looked at Mason. Go home. Be with Lily. I'll handle this. What did they uncover? I don't know, but whatever it is, don't worry. She squeezed his hands once, then let go. I've been fighting battles like this since before you worked here. This one won't be any different. But the tension in her voice suggested otherwise. Mason left the building feeling like he was walking through a dream or a nightmare. The distinction wasn't clear anymore. His phone buzzed constantly as he walked. Messages from colleagues he barely knew asking what happened. Rumors spreading faster than truth. By the time he reached his apartment, the company's internal message board was on fire with speculation. Mrs. Chen was waiting at his door with Lily. I saw the news, she said quietly. Thought you might need some time. What news? She showed him her phone. A business news website had picked up the story. Hale Industries CEO under fire for alleged improper relationship with junior employee. They'd used his name, his photo from the company website, details about his background, his late wife, his daughter. Lily was going to see this. Her friends at school would see it. Parents at pickup would whisper. I need to get her out of here, Mason said. Away from the city for a few days until this blows over. Where will you go? Mason thought about the cabin upstate where he and Emma used to take Lily when she was tiny, before everything fell apart. I know a place. Can you pack some of her things? I'll get the car. 2 hours later, they were driving north out of Manhattan while Lily slept in the back seat, oblivious to the storm surrounding them. Mason's phone kept buzzing, messages from Victoria that he couldn't answer while driving, calls from numbers he didn't recognize. His entire life was imploding in real time, but his daughter was safe, asleep in the back seat, still young enough to not understand that her father had just become tabloid fodder. For now, that would have to be enough. The cabin looked smaller than Mason remembered. Paint peeling on the shutters, weeds overtaking the gravel driveway, a layer of dust on every surface inside. He and Emma had bought it on impulse 7 years ago, back when they thought they'd have decades to use it. After she died, Mason couldn't bring himself to come back. Until now. Lily woke up as he pulled in, rubbing her eyes and looking confused. Where are we? Remember the place Mom used to bring you, with the lake? Her face lit up. The duck house. That's the one. They'd called it the duck house because of the wooden duck decoys Emma had collected from local antique shops, lining them up on the mantel like strange trophies. Lily had been 3 the last time they were here. Mason was surprised she remembered anything. Inside, the air smelled stale and old. Mason opened windows while Lily explored, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floors. Dad, the ducks are still here. He found her in the living room, holding a faded mallard decoy, its paint chipped and worn. She cradled it carefully, like something precious. "We can clean them up if you want," Mason said. "Can we stay here forever?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "Away from the city, where it's quiet." Lily set down the duck, looked at him seriously. "You seem sad there. You're always on your phone or worried about work. You don't seem sad here." Mason crouched down to her level. "We can't stay forever, but we can stay for a few days, just you and me. Promise you won't check your phone every 5 minutes?" "I promise." It was a lie. His phone was already buzzing in his pocket. But Lily smiled, and that felt more important than honesty in the moment. That first night they ate pasta from a can heated on the old gas stove because Mason forgot to stop for groceries. Lily didn't complain. They sat on the porch watching the sun set over the lake, painting the water in shades of orange and red that made everything look on fire. "Do you think Mom liked it here?" Lily asked quietly. "She loved it. Said it was the only place that felt like home." "Do you miss her?" Mason thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated. He missed Emma every day and hardly at all. Missed who they'd been together while knowing he'd changed into someone she wouldn't fully recognize. "Yeah," he said finally, "but different than I used to. It hurts less now. More like remembering something good that's gone instead of feeling like part of me is missing." Lily nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. "Is Ms. Hale going to be like a new mom?" "Kiddo, we're not." Mason stumbled over the words. "It's complicated. You always say that." "Because it always is." Later, after Lily fell asleep in the room that still had her old toddler drawings taped to the walls, Mason finally looked at his phone. 43 messages, most from numbers he didn't recognize. 3 from Victoria. The first, "Board meeting was brutal. Call me when you can." The second, "Where are you? Need to talk." The third, sent an hour ago. "Please tell me you're okay." Mason stepped outside and dialed her number. She answered immediately. "Where the hell are you?" No greeting, just raw concern. "Upstate. At a cabin Emma and I used to own. I needed to get Lily away from the city before this got worse." "It's already worse." Victoria's voice was tight. "The board voted tonight. I'm being removed as CEO pending the investigation results." Mason felt like he'd been punched. "What?" "Effective immediately. They're installing Richard Hammond as interim CEO. The same Richard Hammond who's been trying to push me out for 3 years." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "They needed an excuse. We gave them one." "This is my fault." "This is not your fault. This is politics and power plays and men who never wanted a woman running their company in the first place." A pause. "But they found something, Mason, in the investigation." His stomach dropped. "What did they find?" "Emails. From my personal account to yours. Nothing explicit, but enough to establish a pattern of communication outside work hours. Meeting scheduling at restaurants, hotel bookings for the San Francisco trip that showed our rooms on the same floor." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "Someone went through my personal accounts, my private correspondence. They built a timeline that makes it look like I've been grooming you from the moment we met." "That's insane. We weren't." "I know that. You know that. But the optics are terrible. Junior employee with a tragic backstory. Powerful CEO who gives him unprecedented access. Late-night meetings. Rapid advancement. They've constructed a narrative that makes me look predatory, and you look opportunistic." Mason sat down hard on the porch steps. "What happens now?" "Now I lawyer up and fight. But Mason, they're coming for you too. HR wants to interview you as part of the investigation. You need legal representation." "I can't afford a lawyer." "I'll pay for it." "That makes it look worse." "I don't care how it looks anymore." Victoria's voice was fierce now. "I will not let them destroy you because you had the misfortune of being good at your job while I happened to care about you." Mason heard something in the background. Voices. Victoria speaking to someone else, muffled. "I have to go," she said. "My attorney just arrived. But Mason, don't talk to anyone from the company. Not HR, not your former colleagues, nobody. Everything you say can be twisted." Victoria, "I'm going to fix this. I promise." The line went dead. Mason sat on the porch steps for a long time, staring at the dark lake. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, protected by temporary distance from a mess she didn't understand and shouldn't have to. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Sarah Chen, David's wife. We need to talk. I have information about the investigation that you need to hear. Please call me." Mason stared at the message. David Chen's wife reaching out felt like a trap. But what if it wasn't? He called. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Mr. Reed, thank you for calling back. What information?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet tomorrow? There's a diner off Route 9 about 20 miles from where you are. I checked property records. I know about the cabin." "How do you?" "Because my husband has been building a case against you for months, and I'm tired of watching him destroy people's lives to protect his ego." Sarah's voice was calm but firm. "10 a.m. tomorrow. Come alone. I'll explain everything." She hung up before Mason could respond. He went back inside, checked on Lily, then lay awake on the old couch staring at ceiling water stains and trying to figure out what the hell was happening to his life. The diner was exactly the kind of place that existed to serve truckers and tourists. Vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. A waitress who looked like she'd seen everything and was unimpressed by all of it. Sarah Chen sat in a corner booth wearing jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the polished executive wife Mason had imagined. She was younger than David by at least 10 years, with tired eyes and a manila folder on the table in front of her. Mason slid into the seat across from her. "You came alone?" Sarah asked. "My daughter's at the cabin with a neighbor who drove up to watch her. What's this about?" Sarah pushed the folder across the table. "This is about my husband orchestrating a corporate coup and using you as the excuse to do it." Mason opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, text messages, meeting notes. He recognized David's name throughout. And others, senior VPs, board members, people with power. "They've been planning this for 6 months, Sarah said quietly, "since before you got promoted. The goal was always to remove Victoria. They needed ammunition. When you came along, when she started promoting you, they saw an opportunity." Mason read through the documents. The pattern was clear. David and his coalition had been documenting every interaction between Mason and Victoria, building a narrative of impropriety even when none existed. "Why are you showing me this?" Mason asked. "Because I'm tired of being married to a man who destroys people to get ahead. Because Victoria Hale is twice the leader my husband will ever be, and watching him tear her down makes me sick." Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "And because you have a daughter. I saw the photos David collected, the surveillance of you picking her up from school, the documentation of your schedule. He was building a profile on you like you were some kind of criminal. That's insane. That's corporate politics, and my husband is very good at it." Sarah leaned forward. "But here's what he doesn't know. I made copies of everything, every email, every meeting note, every piece of evidence they doctored or exaggerated, and I'm willing to give it all to Victoria's legal team." "Why?" "Because someone should be willing to do the right thing, and because—" Sarah hesitated. "I left him 2 days ago. Took our kids and moved into my sister's place. I'm done being complicit in his bullshit." Mason stared at her. "You're risking everything to help us." "I'm risking a marriage that was already dead. My husband cares more about his title than his family. I'm just making it official." She stood, leaving the folder on the table. "Give this to Victoria's attorney. Tell them Sarah Chen is willing to testify if needed. My contact information is inside." "Sarah, thank you." "Don't thank me. Just make sure it counts." She dropped money on the table for her untouched coffee. "And Mr. Reed, whatever you and Victoria have, don't let them make you ashamed of it. I've seen the emails David printed out, the ones he highlighted as evidence. You know what I saw? 2 people who actually give a damn about each other in an industry full of sharks. That's not scandalous. That's rare." She left before Mason could respond. He sat in the booth for another 20 minutes, reading through the documents. Every page was another piece of evidence that this investigation was never about the truth. It was about power, about removing someone who threatened the old guard's control. Mason called Victoria's attorney from the parking lot, explained what he had. The attorney told him to overnight the documents immediately and to expect a call from Victoria soon. When he got back to the cabin, Lily was on the porch with Mrs. Chen, painting rocks they'd collected from the lakeshore. "Dad, look! I made this one look like a turtle." Mason examined the rock. It looked nothing like a turtle. That's amazing, kiddo. Mrs. Chen caught his eye, raised an eyebrow in question. Mason gave a small nod. Things were happening, maybe good things. That night, Victoria called. My attorney got the documents. Mason, this changes everything. Can you use it? We're presenting it to the board tomorrow. Sarah Chen's testimony proves the investigation was compromised from the start, that they were manufacturing evidence to support a predetermined conclusion. Victoria sounded more alive than she had in days. We might actually survive this. What about your position? Can you get it back? I don't know. Richard Hammond has been poisoning the board against me all week, but with this evidence, at least we have a fighting chance. Mason heard something in her voice. But even if we win, everything changes. The board will never trust me the same way. Every decision I make will be scrutinized, and you, she paused, you'll always be the junior employee who got involved with the CEO. Some people will never see past that. So what do? We fight. And then we figure out if we can live with the consequences. They talked for another hour. About strategy. About the board meeting tomorrow. About what came next if they won, and what came next if they lost. When they finally hung up, Mason felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. The board meeting happened without Mason present. He got updates via text from Victoria's attorney throughout the day, presenting evidence now, board reviewing documents, Sarah Chen joining via video conference. Hammond is objecting. Claims documents are inadmissible. Board chairman calling for recess. Mason paced the cabin living room while Lily watched cartoons, oblivious to the fact that her father's entire career was being decided by a group of people in a Manhattan boardroom. 3 hours later, Victoria called. We won. Mason's legs went weak. He sat down hard on the couch. What? The board reviewed the evidence. Sarah's testimony was damning. They've reinstated me as CEO effective immediately. Richard Hammond resigned rather than face questions about his role in the scheme. Victoria's voice was shaking. And they're dropping the investigation into you. Complete exoneration. You're cleared to return to work. Just like that? Not just like that. There are conditions. We both have to undergo ethics training. Your promotion is being reviewed by an independent committee to verify it was merit-based. And she paused. We can't have a relationship while you're employed at Hale Industries. Not publicly, not privately. It's a strict conflict of interest policy going forward. The words hit like a physical blow. So we have to choose the job or each other. Yes, Mason thought about Lily, about the stability this job provided, about health insurance and college savings and all the practical reasons he'd taken this position in the first place. Then he thought about Victoria in that elevator, about late-night phone calls and stolen moments and feeling seen for the first time in years. I need time, he said quietly, to figure out what the right choice is. I know. Take the time you need. Victoria's voice was soft. But Mason, whatever you decide, I meant what I said. You earned your position. Don't let anyone take that away from you. They hung up. Mason sat in silence, staring at the lake through the window. Lily appeared at his elbow. Was that Ms. Hale? Yeah. Is everything okay now? Mason pulled her onto his lap, held her tight. I don't know yet, kiddo, but we're going to figure it out. The next morning, Mason drove back to the city with a clarity he hadn't expected. He'd spent the night thinking about Emma, about promises made and broken, about what kind of father he wanted to be and what kind of man he'd become. He dropped Lily at school, kissed her goodbye, and headed to Hale Industries. Victoria's assistant looked surprised to see him. Mr. Reed, we weren't expecting you back until... I need to see Victoria. Is she available? She's in a meeting, but I can... It's fine. I'll wait. 20 minutes later, Victoria's office door opened. She looked tired but steady. Seeing Mason, something flickered across her face. Come in. Mason followed her inside, closed the door. I'm resigning, he said. Victoria's expression went very still. What? From Hale Industries, effective 2 weeks from now. I'll help transition my projects, finish anything urgent, but then I'm done. Because of the board's conditions, Mason, you don't have to... I'm not resigning because of the board. I'm resigning because I can't be both the employee you need and the partner I want to be. And between those two things, the choice is obvious. Victoria stared at him. You're choosing me over your career. I'm choosing us over a job I was using to prove something to myself. I'm good at this work, Victoria. You showed me that. But there are other companies, other opportunities. This is the only you. What about Lily? The stability you need? I've got savings. Severance will help. And I've already started looking at positions with companies that don't have anti-fraternization policies. Mason moved closer. I spent 3 years building a life around playing it safe, around making sure nothing could hurt us because we'd already been hurt enough. But Lily asked me if I was sad, and I realized I've been sad for years, until you. Victoria's eyes were bright. This is insane. Probably, but you're the one who told me strange doesn't mean wrong. She kissed him, not careful or hidden, just real. When they broke apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. You know this means you'll have to deal with me outside of work, without the professional buffer. Terrifying prospect. I'm serious. I'm difficult. I don't know how to turn off the CEO brain. I'll probably try to optimize our relationship like it's a quarterly review. I'm a single dad who hasn't dated seriously in 3 years and comes with a 7-year-old who will judge your Disney princess opinions. We're both disasters. So we're doing this? Yeah, we're doing this. The next 2 weeks were chaos of the good kind. Mason wrapped up his projects, trained his replacement, said goodbye to colleagues who'd become friends. Some people understood his decision. Others thought he was throwing away his career for a relationship that would probably fail. David Chen cleaned out his office the same week Mason did, fired for his role in the investigation scheme. They passed each other in the hallway once. David didn't say anything, just looked at Mason with an expression that might have been respect or might have been hatred. Mason couldn't tell and didn't particularly care. On his last day, Mason stood in his empty office looking out at Manhattan. A year ago, he'd been invisible. Now he was walking away from the job that had made him visible on his own terms. Victoria appeared in the doorway. Ready? Yeah, just taking it in. Any regrets? Mason thought about it honestly. Not about leaving, maybe about the mess we caused getting here, but not about the choice itself. Good. Because Lily's waiting downstairs with Mrs. Chen. Something about wanting to see where you worked before you quit. They rode the elevator down together. The same elevator where this had all started. Victoria caught his hand, squeezed once. Thank you, she said quietly, for being brave enough to choose this. Thank you for being worth choosing. The doors opened. Lily was in the lobby with Mrs. Chen, spinning in circles on the marble floor and watching her reflection in the glass walls. When she saw Mason, she ran over. Dad, can we go get pizza now? You promised. Pizza it is. Victoria hung back, uncertain. She and Lily had never actually met. This was new territory for all of them. Lily looked up at her. Are you Miss Hale? I am. You must be Lily. Dad talks about you a lot. He smiles when he does it, which is weird because he used to just look tired when he talked about work. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. I've been told I have that effect. Do you like pizza? The question was so direct, so Lily, that Victoria looked momentarily lost. Mason stepped in. What Lily's really asking is if you want to join us for dinner. I would love to. Victoria crouched down to Lily's level. But I have to warn you, I'm going to ask you all about your Disney princess opinions. I hear you have strong feelings about Moana. Lily's face lit up. She's the best one because she doesn't need a prince, and she saves her whole island, and she has a cool grandma. Solid reasoning. I'm convinced. They left the building together, Mason, Victoria, Lily, and Mrs. Chen, who insisted on joining because she'd grown attached to the whole mess and wanted to see how it turned out. The pizza place was loud and crowded and perfect. Lily dominated the conversation, telling Victoria about school and her magic tricks and the science museum trip she'd finally gotten to attend last week. Victoria listened like Lily was the most interesting person in the room, asked follow-up questions, laughed at the right moments. And when Lily accidentally spilled soda across the table, Victoria helped clean it up without making a thing about it. Mason watched them together and felt something settle in his chest. This was right. Messy and complicated and absolutely right. After dinner, they walked Lily and Mrs. Chen to their building. Lily hugged Victoria goodbye without being prompted, which felt like approval. Then it was just Mason and Victoria on a Manhattan sidewalk at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. "So," Victoria said, "what now?" "Now I start job hunting. You go back to running a billion-dollar company. We figure out how to date like normal people." "We're not normal people." "No, but we can try." Victoria smiled, the real smile, the one that made her look younger and less guarded and fully present. "I'm holding you to that." They walked through the city together, not quite holding hands, but close enough that their shoulders bumped occasionally. Two people who'd found each other in an elevator and somehow managed to survive everything that came after. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still worked insane hours. Mason still struggled with balancing fatherhood and his own needs. They fought sometimes, about scheduling, about boundaries, about Victoria's tendency to treat their relationship like a project that needed optimizing. But they also laughed, built inside jokes, learned each other's rhythms. Victoria became a fixture in Lily's life, showing up for school events and teaching her about negotiation tactics that made parent-teacher conferences both easier and slightly concerning. Mason found a position at a smaller firm that valued his skills without the politics. The pay was less, but the stress was manageable, and he never missed pickup. And late at night, when Lily was asleep and the city was quiet, Mason and Victoria would sit on his apartment balcony and talk about nothing important while Manhattan glittered below them. "Do you ever regret it?" Victoria asked one night. "Walking away from everything we built?" Mason looked at her, really looked, at the woman who'd seen him when he was invisible, who'd pushed him to be more than he thought he could be, who'd chosen him even when it cost her everything. "Not even once," he said, and he meant it. 6 months after leaving Hale Industries, Mason stood in a conference room at Sterling Analytics, presenting quarterly projections to a group of executives who actually seemed interested in what he had to say. The firm was smaller, the stakes lower, but the work was solid and nobody questioned whether he'd earned his seat at the table. His phone buzzed during a break. "Victoria. Lily's school called. She's in the nurse's office. Says her stomach hurts." Mason texted back immediately. "On my way." He grabbed his laptop, made apologies to his team, and was out the door in under 3 minutes. This was the difference between Sterling and Hale Industries. Here, leaving for a family emergency didn't require explanation or justification. It was just understood. 20 minutes later, he found Lily curled up on the nurse's cot, looking miserable. "Hey, kiddo, what's going on?" "My stomach really hurts." But her eyes were red like she'd been crying. The nurse pulled Mason aside. "No fever, no other symptoms, but she was pretty upset when she came in. Asked specifically if we could call Ms. Hale instead of you." That stung more than it should have. In the car, Lily was quiet. Too quiet. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" Mason asked. "My stomach does hurt." "Lily," she stared out the window. "There's a father-daughter dance at school next Friday. Everyone's talking about it, about what they're going to wear and how their dads are taking them to dinner first." Understanding clicked. "And you don't want to go." "I want to go, but—" Her voice got small. "What if you have to work? What if something comes up and you can't make it? It's easier to just not go than get excited and be disappointed." Mason pulled over. Right there on a random Manhattan side street, he put the car in park and turned to face his daughter. "I have never missed one of your school events since I left Hale Industries. Not one. Not because I'm perfect, but because I learned my lesson about what matters." He reached for her hand. "I'm going to that dance with you. We're going to dinner first. You're going to wear whatever ridiculous dress you want, and I'm going to embarrass you on the dance floor. That's a promise." "You promise promises now, not just regular promises." "I promise promises." Lily's lip trembled. "I don't want you to get a new job that makes you sad again." "I'm not sad anymore, Lily. I'm actually happy. And a lot of that is because I get to be your dad without feeling like I'm failing at it." She launched herself across the console and hugged him hard. Mason held her, the small person who'd been through so much and was still learning to trust that good things could last. When they got home, Victoria was already there. She'd let herself in with the key Mason had given her 2 months ago, a gesture that felt bigger than it probably should have. "How's the patient?" Victoria asked. "Faking," Lily said, then caught Mason's look. "Okay, half faking. My stomach did hurt a little." "Stress stomach ache," Victoria said knowingly. "I get those before board meetings. Hot chocolate helps." She headed to the kitchen like she lived there, which she sort of did now. 3 nights a week at Mason's place, 2 at hers, weekends negotiated based on Lily's schedule and Victoria's work crises. It wasn't conventional, but it worked. Later, after Lily went to bed, Mason found Victoria on the balcony with her laptop, reviewing documents for tomorrow's acquisition meeting. "You know you don't have to work every night you're here," Mason said. "I know, but this deal closes Friday and I want to review the contingency clauses one more time." Mason looked over her shoulder at the screen, immediately spotted an issue with the liability language. That section there. If the acquisition falls through, you're on the hook for the full termination fee. You need to cap it at 30% or negotiate a shared cost structure. Victoria stared at the screen, then at him. "How did you see that in 3 seconds?" "Because I'm good at this. And because you trained me well." She closed the laptop. "I miss having you in meetings. My new strategic development team is competent, but they don't push back the way you did. They tell me what they think I want to hear. That's because you're terrifying." "I'm not terrifying to you." "You're a little terrifying to me. I've just gotten used to it." Victoria smiled, but it faded quickly. The board approved a major expansion into Asian markets. It's going to mean a lot of travel over the next year. Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, weeks at a time. Mason felt his stomach drop. "How many weeks?" 2 to 3 weeks per quarter. Maybe more if we run into complications. That's a lot of time away. "I know." Victoria looked out at the city. "I could turn it down. Let someone else lead the expansion." "You're not going to do that." "No. But I wanted you to know I considered it." Mason sat beside her. "We'll figure it out. Same way we figured out everything else." "Will we?" "Because this is different, Mason. This isn't late nights at the office or weekend work sessions. This is me being literally on the other side of the world while you're here raising Lily alone." "I've been raising Lily alone for years. I can handle it." "That's not the point." Victoria's voice was frustrated now. "The point is you shouldn't have to. The point is I'm asking you to build a life with me while simultaneously telling you I'm going to be absent for huge chunks of it. So what are you saying? You want to end this?" "No. I'm saying I don't know how to be both the CEO I need to be and the partner you deserve." She turned to face him fully. "And I'm terrified that eventually you're going to realize you'd be better off with someone who can actually be present. Someone with a normal job and normal hours, who can show up for school events and family dinners without their phone buzzing every 5 minutes." Mason had heard this fear before, in different words. It usually came out late at night when Victoria was exhausted and her guard was down. "You know what Lily said to me today?" Mason said quietly. "She said I'm not sad anymore. That was her metric for whether my life was working, not whether I was successful or impressive or climbing some ladder, just whether I seemed happy." "Are you?" "Happy? Yeah, even with the complications. Even with you traveling half the year and me figuring out how to build a career that doesn't consume my life. I'm happy." He took her hand. "You keep waiting for me to realize I made a mistake choosing you. But Victoria, you're not a mistake. You're the best decision I've made since Lily was born." "That's a low bar. Lily wasn't a decision, she was a biological inevitability." "You know what I mean." Victoria leaned against him. "I do. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to wake up and realize this is too hard." "It is too hard, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable quiet that only came from really knowing someone. "The father-daughter dance," Victoria said eventually. "Lily's worried you'll miss it." "I know, I promised her I wouldn't." "Good, because I already bought her a dress. It's purple with sparkles. She's going to hate how much she loves it." Mason laughed. "You bought my daughter a dress without asking me?" "I bought my—" Victoria stopped. "I bought Lily a dress because she mentioned wanting one and I was near a store. Is that okay?" The hesitation in her voice was rare. Victoria didn't hesitate about business decisions, but this, parenting stuff, family stuff, she still navigated carefully, like she was afraid of stepping on toes. "It's more than okay," Mason said, "but you almost said something else. My something." "I almost said my daughter, which is insane because she's not. She's yours. I don't know what I am in her life. You're the person who shows up, who bought her a dress and teaches her negotiation tactics and makes hot chocolate when she has stress stomach aches. That's not nothing, Victoria. It's also not a parent. No, but it's family, the kind you choose. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I never thought I'd have this. A relationship that felt real. A kid who tolerates my presence. A life outside the office that I actually care about protecting. Tolerates is a strong word. Lily asked me last week if you were going to move in officially or if you were going to keep visiting like a fancy aunt. What did you tell her? I told her that was a question for you and me to figure out together. Mason paused. But since we're on the topic, what do you think about moving in? Officially. Victoria turned to stare at him. Are you serious? I've been thinking about it for a while. You're here half the week anyway. Lily's gotten used to you being around. And I like coming home to you, even when you're working, even when you're stressed about some board crisis. I just like knowing you're there. I have a penthouse apartment in Manhattan. You have a 2-bedroom in a building with questionable plumbing. So we get a new place, something bigger, somewhere between your world and mine. That's a huge step. Yeah, but we've taken bigger ones. We survived a corporate investigation and a media circus, and you getting temporarily fired. Moving in together seems manageable in comparison. Victoria laughed. Actually, laughed. That's possibly the worst proposal for cohabitation I've ever heard. I'm out of practice with this relationship stuff. Give me a break. She kissed him, soft and certain. Ask me again in 3 months, after the first Asia trip. If we survive that and you still want me taking up closet space, we'll talk seriously about it. Deal. The next few months tested them in ways neither expected. Victoria left for Hong Kong in early November, and the 2-week trip stretched to 3 when negotiations stalled. Mason handled Lily's routine solo, juggled work deadlines, dealt with a burst pipe in the apartment that flooded half the living room. They video called every night when time zones aligned. Sometimes Victoria looked exhausted and wired, talking a mile a minute about contract clauses and cultural differences, and executives who were making her life difficult. Sometimes Mason looked defeated, explaining that Lily had a meltdown about homework, and he'd burned dinner and everything felt harder without Victoria there. I miss you, Victoria said one night, her face pixelated on the screen. I miss you too. But we're surviving. Barely. Barely still counts. When Victoria finally came home, Lily launched herself at her in the airport terminal like Victoria had been gone for years instead of weeks. You're back. Did you bring me something? Lily, you can't just ask for presents, Mason said. It's fine. Victoria pulled a small package from her bag. I brought you something from Tokyo. It's a puzzle box. Lily took it reverently. How does it open? You have to figure it out. That's the point. Lily immediately sat cross-legged on the airport floor, working at the box with intense concentration. Victoria looked at Mason. Hi. Hi. They stood there grinning at each other like idiots until Lily yelled that she'd opened the box and found chocolate inside, and could she eat it right now even though it was almost bedtime. Life found a rhythm after that. Not perfect, not easy, but sustainable. Victoria traveled. Mason held down the home front. They fought sometimes about scheduling and priorities and Victoria's tendency to check work emails during Lily's bedtime stories. But they also figured out how to compromise, how to support each other through hard days, how to build something that worked even when circumstances made it difficult. The father-daughter dance happened in December. Mason wore a suit Lily insisted was too boring until Victoria showed up and told him he looked handsome, at which point Lily decided it was acceptable. Lily wore the purple sparkly dress and was the most enthusiastic dancer on the floor, dragging Mason through every song while he tried not to step on her feet. Halfway through the evening, Lily tugged his sleeve. Can Victoria dance with us? Mason looked over to where Victoria sat at the parent tables, checking her phone and looking slightly out of place. She's not officially your parent, kiddo. This is a father-daughter thing. But she's family. You said so. Mason couldn't argue with that logic. They walked over together. Victoria looked up, surprised. Lily has a request, Mason said. I want you to dance with us, Lily said firmly, because you're family and family dances together. Something crossed Victoria's face. Surprise, pleasure, maybe a hint of tears she'd never admit to. I'd be honored, Victoria said. So they danced, all 3 of them. probably breaking some unwritten father-daughter dance rule, but nobody seemed to care. Lily spun between them, laughing, while Mason caught Victoria's eye over their daughter's head. Their daughter. When had he started thinking of it that way? Later that night, after Lily was asleep and Victoria was packing for another trip, Singapore this time, 10 days, Mason found her in the bedroom staring at an open suitcase like it was a problem she couldn't solve. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I'm leaving again. For the third time in 2 months. And Victoria sat on the edge of the bed. "I watched you and Lily tonight, the way she looks at you. The way you know exactly what she needs before she asks. And I realized I'm never going to have that with her. I'm always going to be the person who shows up intermittently and tries to fit into a family that existed before I got here." Mason sat beside her. "Is that what you think you're doing? Trying to fit in?" "Aren't I? Victoria, you bought Lily a dress for a dance I almost didn't know was happening. You taught her how to negotiate for later bedtimes using logical arguments instead of tantrums. Last week, she told her teacher she wanted to be a CEO when she grew up because Ms. Hale does it, and she's really smart." Mason took her hand. "You're not trying to fit in. You're already part of this family. You have been for months." "Even though I'm gone half the time?" "Even though. Lily understands that your work is important, and when you're here, you're really here. That matters more than perfect attendance." Victoria was quiet for a moment. 3 months ago, you asked me to move in. I said, ask me after the Asia trips." "I remember." "You should ask me again." Mason's heart jumped. "Yeah? Yeah, because I'm tired of living in 2 places. And because Lily asked me this morning when I was going to officially move in so we could reorganize the bookshelves properly." Victoria smiled. "Apparently my current system of shove books anywhere they fit is unacceptable." "She gets that from Emma, the organization thing." "I know, she talks about her mom sometimes, about things she remembers." Victoria met his eyes. "I hope you know I'm not trying to replace Emma. I couldn't even if I wanted to." "I know, and Emma, if she were here, she'd probably tell you to stop overthinking it and just move in already because the back and forth is getting ridiculous." "She sounds practical." "She was. You would have liked each other." They started looking for apartments the following week. Something with enough space for all of them, in a neighborhood with good schools and reasonable proximity to both their offices. The search was harder than expected. Victoria wanted something modern with good security. Mason wanted something with character and outdoor space. Lily wanted a building with a doorman who would let her practice her magic tricks on him. They finally found a place in April. 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a balcony overlooking a small park where Lily could see trees instead of just concrete and glass. The building had a doorman named Marcus, who was patient enough to watch Lily's card tricks without complaint. Moving day was chaos. Victoria tried to organize everything with labeled boxes and color-coded systems. Mason just started unpacking wherever there was space. Lily alternated between helping and getting in the way. "This should go in the kitchen," Victoria said, holding up a box. "That's labeled office supplies," Mason pointed out. "Yes, but it's actually full of coffee mugs. I mislabeled it." "Then maybe we shouldn't trust your system." "My system is perfect. I just made one small error." Lily looked up from the box she was unpacking. "You guys fight like a married couple." They both stopped. "We're not fighting," Victoria said. "We're having a strategic disagreement about box placement." "That's fighting," Lily said matter-of-factly. "But it's okay. Parents fight sometimes. That's normal." Parents. She'd said it so casually, like it was obvious. Victoria caught Mason's eye. He could see the question there, the uncertainty about whether she'd overstepped by letting Lily think of them that way. Mason just smiled and went back to unpacking. That night, surrounded by half-empty boxes and furniture that didn't quite fit yet, they ordered Chinese food and ate sitting on the floor because they hadn't assembled the dining table yet. "This is a disaster," Victoria said, looking around at the chaos. "Yeah," Mason agreed, "but it's our disaster now." Lily was asleep on his couch by 8, exhausted from the move. Mason carried her to her new bedroom, the one she'd already decorated with posters and stuffed animals and the wooden duck from the cabin. When he came back to the living room, Victoria was standing by the window looking out at the park. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this. Your life with Lily. I know it wasn't easy. bringing someone new into something you'd built so carefully. It wasn't easy, Mason admitted, but not because of you, because I was scared of getting it wrong, of Lily getting hurt, of building something good and watching it fall apart. Are you still scared? Terrified, but in a different way now. Mason joined her at the window. Now I'm scared of losing this, of something happening that takes it away. But that's just life, right? Being scared of losing the things that matter. Victoria leaned against him. I spent so many years thinking I didn't need this. Family, partnership, someone who knew me when I wasn't being the CEO. She paused. I was wrong. Turns out I needed it more than I realized. We all need it. Some of us just take longer to admit it. They stood there watching the city lights, two people who'd met by accident in an elevator and somehow built something real from the wreckage of their individual lives. The next morning, Lily woke up early and wandered into Mason and Victoria's room. Can we make pancakes? She asked, climbing onto the bed between them. Victoria groaned. It's 6:30 on a Saturday. Pancakes don't care what time it is. Mason laughed. She's got a point. So they made pancakes in their new kitchen, with Victoria following the recipe exactly, while Mason added chocolate chips when she wasn't looking and Lily supervised from a stool, offering suggestions nobody asked for. It was messy and chaotic and the pancakes were slightly burned, but Lily declared them the best pancakes she'd ever had and insisted on taking a photo to show her teacher on Monday. Later, while Lily was in her room playing, Victoria pulled Mason aside. I've been thinking about something, she said. About Lily. What about her? I know I'm not her parent legally, and I know that's a complicated conversation with a lot of implications, but Victoria hesitated, which was rare for her. I want to be more than just your girlfriend who lives here. I want to be someone Lily can depend on, someone who has actual standing in her life if something happens to you. Mason's chest tightened. Are you talking about adoption? I don't know, maybe? Or guardianship? I haven't researched the legal details. Victoria met his eyes. I just know that I love that kid, and I love you, and I want to make sure that if something happens, which it won't, but if it does, Lily doesn't lose everyone. Mason thought about Emma, about the promise he'd made to always put Lily first, about what Emma would think of this woman who'd walked into their lives and somehow made their family bigger instead of replacing what they'd lost. We should talk to Lily, he said. Make sure she's okay with it before we start looking into legalities. What if she says no? Then we respect that and revisit it later. But Victoria, I think she'll say yes. They talked to Lily that afternoon, sat her down in her new room, and tried to explain what they were proposing in terms a 7-year-old could understand. Lily listened carefully, asked a few questions about what it would mean, then looked at Victoria seriously. Would you have to come to all my school stuff? I'd want to, but I travel a lot for work, so I might miss some things. That's okay. Dad misses stuff sometimes too. Lily paused. Would I call you Mom? Victoria glanced at Mason, uncertain. Only if you want to. You can keep calling me Victoria, or we can figure out something else. What if I called you Vic, like a nickname? I'd like that. Lily nodded, processing. Okay, yeah, you can be my other parent, but you have to promise to keep doing hot chocolate when I have stomach aches. Deal. They shook on it solemnly, and that was that. The legal process took months, paperwork and background checks, and a home visit from a social worker who interviewed all of them separately. Mason had to provide documentation proving he was Lily's sole legal guardian. Victoria had to demonstrate financial stability and character references. Lily told the social worker that Victoria was really smart but kind of bad at normal stuff like cooking and remembering to eat lunch, but that's okay because Dad is good at that. The social worker approved the guardianship in September. No big ceremony, no dramatic announcement, just signatures on documents that meant if something happened to Mason, Lily wouldn't be alone. Victoria cried when they left the lawyer's office. Actual tears. Mason had seen her cry exactly twice before, once during the investigation when she thought her career was over, and once when Lily had been in the hospital with appendicitis and Victoria had been in Singapore unable to get home for 18 hours. I didn't think this would make me emotional, Victoria said, wiping her eyes. You just legally committed to being responsible for a 7-year-old who thinks magic is a viable career path. That's pretty emotional. She's 8 now, as she reminds me constantly. Even worse, 8-year-olds are even more unreasonable than 7-year-olds. They picked Lily up from school together, like they did most days now. Lily ran over, backpack bouncing, and immediately started talking about a science project involving volcanoes. Can we make one that actually explodes? A big one? Maybe in the living room? Absolutely not, Mason and Victoria said in unison. Lily grinned. Worth asking. That night, after Lily was in bed, Mason found Victoria on the balcony with a glass of wine, looking out at the park. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different my life looks from what I expected. Victoria turned to face him. 5 years ago, I would have told you I'd be CEO forever. That work was enough, that I didn't need anything else. And now? Now I have a family, a daughter who thinks I'm smart but can't cook, a partner who left his career to be with me, a life that's messy and complicated and nothing like I planned. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Victoria smiled. It's the best thing, even with the complications, even with the parts that are hard. Mason pulled her close. They stood there watching the city, two people who'd survived corporate investigations and public scrutiny and the complicated mathematics of building a family from pieces that didn't originally fit together. A year later, Hale Industries announced record profits from their Asian expansion. Victoria was profiled in business magazines as one of the most successful CEOs of her generation. The articles mentioned her unorthodox personal life, living with a former employee, raising his daughter, maintaining a relationship that had started as a scandal, but the tone had shifted. Now it was presented as refreshing, modern, evidence that women could have both career success and personal fulfillment. Victoria found the coverage amusing and slightly irritating. They make it sound like I invented the concept of having a family, she complained over breakfast one Saturday. You kind of did invent your specific version of having a family, Mason pointed out. Most CEOs don't date their former employees. Most CEOs are boring. Lily looked up from her waffles. Can I read the article? Absolutely not. It's full of corporate jargon you'd find painfully dull. Is it about you and Dad falling in love? Among other things. That's not boring. That's a good story. Lily took another bite of waffle. You should tell it better. The article probably makes it sound all businessy, but really it's about Dad being sad and you being lonely, and then you met in an elevator and everything got better. Victoria and Mason exchanged glances. That's actually pretty accurate, Mason said. I know. I pay attention. Lily finished her breakfast and stood. Can Vic take me to the bookstore? She promised last week. I did promise, Victoria confirmed, though I'm now regretting it because you'll talk me into buying 6 books instead of 2. That's the point of having 2 parents. When one says no, you ask the other. That's not how it works, Mason called after her as she headed to get ready. It's exactly how it works, Lily yelled back. After they left, Mason cleaned up breakfast and thought about Lily's summary of their story. Dad being sad, Victoria being lonely, meeting in an elevator, everything getting better. It was reductive, but true. He had been sad, drowning in responsibility and grief and the exhausting work of being everything to one small person. Victoria had been lonely, surrounded by people, but truly known by nobody. And then an elevator had stopped between floors. Sometimes Mason still thought about that moment. What would have happened if Victoria had taken her private elevator that morning? If he'd been running late and missed that car? If they'd ridden those 43 minutes in silence instead of talking? His whole life would be different, smaller, safer, maybe, but emptier. The apartment door opened. Victoria poked her head in. Forgot my wallet. Also, Lily wants to know if we can get a dog. Absolutely not. That's what I said. But she's developing a very persuasive argument about responsibility and companionship. I think she's been reading my business negotiation books. That's your fault for leaving them where she can reach them. Fair point. Victoria grabbed her wallet, then paused. What are you thinking about? You have that reflective look. Just how lucky we got, with the elevator stopping that day. Luck had nothing to do with it. Elevator maintenance schedules are based on usage patterns and mechanical wear. You know what I mean. Victoria smiled, walked over and kissed him. Yeah, I do. And for the record, I think we're pretty lucky too. She left again, the sound of her heels clicking down the hallway mixing with Lily's chatter about which bookstore they should try first. Mason stood in the quiet apartment, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life. Lily's drawings on the fridge next to Victoria's work notes, Mason's books mixed with Victoria's on the shelves, Photos from the past year covering every surface. The three of them at the cabin, Lily's birthday party, a candid shot someone had taken of Victoria and Mason dancing at a company event. This was what building a life looked like. Not perfect, not neat, full of compromise and negotiation and moments of doubt, but real, solid, worth every difficult conversation and sacrifice it had taken to get here. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Lily wants to get ice cream after the bookstore. I'm blaming you if she's impossible tonight. Totally worth it, Mason texted back. Agreed. Love you? Love you too. 2 years after moving in together, on a random Tuesday in October, Victoria came home from work looking uncharacteristically nervous. We need to talk, she said. Mason's stomach dropped. Those 4 words had never preceded good news. What happened? He asked. Victoria sat on the couch, patted the seat beside her. The board offered me a position, CEO of Hale International. It's a new division they're creating to handle all global operations. That's incredible. Congratulations. It's based in London. The words hung in the air. London, Mason repeated. As in England, London. As in we'd have to move, all of us, for at least 3 years, possibly longer. Mason's brain stuttered. When? 6 months. They want the division operational by next April. What did you tell them? That I needed to discuss it with my family first. Victoria's voice was careful. Because this isn't just my decision anymore. It affects all of us. Lily's school, your job, everything we've built here. Mason stood up, started pacing. London, that's not a small move. I know. Lily would have to leave her friends, change schools, learn a whole new city. I know. And my job, I'd have to find something new, in a different country with different work culture and... I know, Mason. Victoria stood too, which is why I told them I needed time. Because if you say no, if this is too much, I'll turn it down. You'd turn down being CEO of a global division? I'd turn down anything that meant losing this, losing you and Lily. Victoria moved closer. I've learned that lesson. Work isn't everything, and no title is worth sacrificing my family for. Mason looked at her, at the woman who'd once told him she'd built walls so high nobody could see over them, who'd learned to love a ready-made family and all the complications that came with it, who was willing to walk away from the opportunity of a lifetime because she understood what really mattered. We should ask Lily, he said. They talked to her that night, explained the opportunity, what it would mean, the changes it would require. Lily listened carefully, asked questions about London, about whether they had good bookstores and if she could still video call her friends from New York. Would we all go together? She asked finally. Yes, Victoria said. All of us or none of us? And would we come back eventually? Probably, after a few years. Lily thought about it. Can I sleep on it? Of course. The next morning, Lily came to breakfast with a list. Actual written list of pros and cons, organized by category. Mason recognized Victoria's influence immediately. Okay, Lily said seriously. Here's what I think. Cons. Leaving my friends, new school, different country. Pros. Adventure, learning about new places, getting to see Big Ben and the Tower of London, and... She looked at Victoria. You'd be happy. You like your work. This would make you happy. Lily, you don't have to make this decision based on what I want, Victoria said. I know, but you're my parent now. Parents are supposed to be happy too, not just kids. Lily set down her list. I think we should go, but only if Dad agrees. They both looked at Mason. He thought about the life they'd built in New York, the apartment they'd finally made feel like home, his job that was steady and manageable, the routine they'd established. Then he thought about what he'd learned over the past 3 years, that the best things in life often came from taking risks, that building something worth having meant being willing to rebuild when circumstances changed. That home wasn't a place, it was the people you chose to stand beside. I think we should go too, he said. Victoria's face lit up. Really? Really, but I have conditions. Name them. We find Lily a good school before we commit. You promise to be home for dinner at least 4 nights a week, and we keep the New York apartment, so we always have a place to come back to if London doesn't work out. Done. All of it. Lily pumped her fist. We're moving to London. We're moving to London, Victoria confirmed, looking slightly stunned that it was actually happening. The next 6 months were chaos of the productive kind. Selling Victoria's Manhattan penthouse, finding renters for their apartment, researching schools in London, dealing with work visas and international moving companies, and all the bureaucracy that came with relocating a family across an ocean. Lily handled it better than either adult. She researched British slang, started watching BBC shows to get used to the accents, made a countdown calendar on her wall marking days until the move. Mason's firm was supportive, helped him find a position with their London office. The job was similar to what he'd been doing, but with slightly more responsibility and considerably better views. Victoria was back in full CEO mode, traveling between New York and London constantly to set up the new division. But she kept her promise about family dinners, about being present when she was home instead of just physically there while mentally at work. They moved in March. The London apartment was in Kensington, walking distance from Lily's new school and close to Victoria's office. Modern, but with character. Big windows overlooking a small garden square where kids played football and dogs chased each other in circles. It's smaller than New York, Lily observed on their first night, standing in her new bedroom. Yeah, Mason agreed. Is that okay? Yeah, it's cozy, like the cabin. She was right. The place had a warmth their New York apartment had taken months to achieve. That first year in London was an adjustment. Lily struggled initially at her new school, missing her friends and feeling like the weird American kid. Mason navigated a new workplace culture where people were polite but reserved until you proved yourself. Victoria worked insane hours getting the international division operational, but they made it work. Lily found friends who thought her American accent was cool and taught her cricket in exchange for baseball lessons. Mason earned respect at his new firm by being competent and not trying to prove he was the smartest person in the room. Victoria built a division that exceeded everyone's projections and proved she could lead on an international scale. And on weekends they explored London together. Museums and markets and hidden parks, fish and chips by the Thames, day trips to countryside villages where Lily could run around in fields while Mason and Victoria held hands and pretended they weren't both exhausted from the week. One Saturday afternoon, almost exactly 3 years after that elevator had stopped, they were walking through Greenwich Park when Lily ran ahead to see the Royal Observatory. Victoria caught Mason's hand. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? All of this. Leaving your job at Hale, moving to London, building a life that's way more complicated than it needed to be. Mason thought about the man he'd been 3 years ago. Invisible. Drowning. Convinced that survival was the best he could hope for. Not even a little bit, he said. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. The hard stuff is what makes it real, Victoria smiled. That's very philosophical. I have my moments, Lily called from up ahead, waving for them to hurry up so they could see the prime meridian. They walked faster, catching up to their daughter at the line that divided the eastern and western hemispheres. Lily insisted on taking photos with one foot in each hemisphere, declaring herself internationally balanced. That's not what that means, Mason said. It's what it means now, Lily insisted. They took the photo anyway. Later, walking back through the park as the sun set over London, Lily between them holding both their hands, Mason thought about how strange life was. How one broken elevator, one moment of unexpected connection had changed everything. He'd been looking for stability when he met Victoria, for a way to provide for Lily while keeping his own head above water. Instead, he'd found something bigger, a partner who challenged him, a life that was messier and richer and fuller than anything he'd planned. Victoria squeezed his hand. When he looked over, she was smiling at something Lily was saying about whether they could get a dog now that they lived in a place with a garden square. Still no, Victoria was saying, but nice try. What if I build a really good case, with data and charts like you use at work? Then I'll be impressed by your presentation skills and still say no. Lily sighed dramatically. You're so stubborn. I'm consistent. There's a difference. Mason listened to them banter and felt something settle in his chest. This was it. This was the life he'd been too afraid to hope for. Not perfect, not simple, but his. That night, after Lily was asleep, Mason found Victoria on their small balcony overlooking the garden square. She was wrapped in a blanket, holding a mug of tea and looking out at the city lights. What are you thinking about? He asked, settling beside her. How different everything is from 3 years ago. How terrified I was that first day in the elevator with you. You didn't seem terrified. I was having a panic attack. I just hide it well. Victoria leaned against him. I kept thinking about how if anyone found out I'd lost control, even for 40 minutes, it would undermine everything I'd built. All that fear over nothing. Not nothing. You were vulnerable in front of someone. That's scary. It was the best thing that could have happened because you didn't treat me differently after. Didn't act like I owed you something for witnessing a moment of weakness. You just saw me, the real me, and liked what you saw anyway. Mason kissed the top of her head. I more than liked it. I know. That was the scary part. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the square below. A couple walked past holding hands. A man was walking his dog. Normal people living normal lives in the same city where they were building their extraordinary one. Do you think we'll stay here? Victoria asked. In London? I don't know. Does it matter? Not really. As long as we're together, you, me, and Lily, the location is just geography. Mason thought about that. About how home had changed definition over the past 3 years. It wasn't New York or London or the cabin upstate. It was wherever the three of them were, making it work, building something that mattered. Yeah, he said, just geography. They stayed on the balcony a while longer, two people who'd met by accident and fallen in love on purpose, watching their city sleep while their daughter dreamed of dogs and adventures and all the possibilities that came with being 8 years old in a world that felt full of second chances. Inside, Lily's room was quiet except for the sound of her breathing. The wooden duck from the cabin sat on her nightstand next to a photo of Emma that Mason had given her when she asked about her mom. Victoria's business card was tucked into the frame, the one from that first elevator ride, with her personal number scribbled on the back. Lily had kept it because she said it was part of their story, the beginning of how their family had grown from 2 to 3. Mason stood in the doorway watching his daughter sleep, marveling at how resilient kids were, how they adapted to changes that would break adults, how they found joy in the smallest things and forgave the biggest mistakes. She's going to be okay, Victoria said quietly from behind him. Yeah, she is. We all are. And standing there in the London apartment they'd made into a home, with the family they'd built from broken pieces and unexpected connections, Mason believed her. Because the truth was simple, even if the path to get there hadn't been. Sometimes life stopped between floors. Sometimes that interruption was exactly what you needed to see what you'd been missing. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, you found people who made the hard parts worth it. Mason Reed had stepped into an elevator as an invisible man drowning in responsibility. He'd stepped out as someone capable of being seen, of building a life that mattered, of choosing love even when it cost everything. He'd thought success looked like climbing ladders and earning titles and proving his worth to people who didn't care. Turned out, it looked like this. A sleeping daughter who felt secure enough to dream. A partner who'd learned to trust after years of building walls. A family that wasn't perfect but was real and chosen and worth every difficult moment it took to create. The elevator had stopped 3 years ago, but their story was just beginning.